Well, the message really got started as a pastoral assignment. I was a professor of biblical languages before I became a pastor. And so when I became a pastor, it was a new church development. And I just did what I did as a professor. I lectured. And this poor congregation listened to lectures. I was explaining Hebrew roots and Greek idioms, and they patiently sat there. And after maybe 2 or 3 years, I realized this isn't working. So I started listening to them. I've been listening to Scripture all my life, but I have been listening to people, especially people gathered in worship. So when I started listening to them, trying to enter into their conversation, their world, and their kids, the young people in my congregation, then I began to enter into their lives not as an explainer or a definer, but as a conversational partner. And that's how it started. I wasn't conscious of doing it. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that I was learning how to be a pastor. So I would never have thought what I was doing was translation. This is a pastoral act. We were building a new church at the time, and every once in a while, I just lived a quarter of a mile from the building site. I'd walk up to see what the workmen were doing, and from 100 yards away, I could hear them yelling and talking and cursing. And by the time I got within sight of them, they quit. And when I got there was just total silence. And I realized that, we're in two different worlds. And they're not used to talking in the presence of a pastor. So that kind of gave me, I wasn't going to start cussing in front of them, but I wasn't going to enter their conversation. And when I did, they started talking again. So that's how it started. It was really a kind of a slow evolution. Probably took me 7 or 8 years before I really arrived at what the message starts to sound like. In my years of teaching Greek and Hebrew, I was determined to get my students to see that text accurately in its context. That's what I was trying to do with my congregation. They weren't interested in the genealogy or the non-genealogy of Melchizedek. But they were interested in their own kids. And they're one of the transitional passages that I can remember when I was realizing this. I had a sermon on the genealogy of some remote person in Genesis, and said, if your kid's name was in that genealogy, you'd read it carefully. And so that kind of was an introduction into why that's so important, not just for Abraham and Esau and Jacob, but for them. It was a great gospel sermon. But I would never have thought of that on my own. But it took a congregation to do that, bring that out of me.